We're really very pleased to have Anna Mauvet here, member of Temple B'nai Shalom. She's speaking to our Hebrew High class. Hello, Hebrew High class.
Hi.
Hello, hello. And she's going to be sharing a little bit about her experiences growing up in Russia, being Jewish in Russia, and her husband's experiences in Ukraine. So thank you very much, Anna, for being with us this evening.
Hi, everybody. So you all know the country Russia. Now everybody knows there's a country Ukraine. But at some point, we're going to have, right now I'm going to give you some history lessons, which you probably haven't learned in school. Maybe you have already. Russia and Ukraine were a part of a bigger country at some point, and it was called Soviet Union. Have you heard of it? Okay. So it's basically where I was born. Probably seems ancient to you. Me and my husband, we were born in Soviet Union, and he was born in part of it that was called Ukraine. I was part of where it was called Russia. He's from Odessa, I'm from Moscow. And the roots of anti-Semitism, that's what basically I'm going to talk about to you right now, run a very, very long history in Soviet Union and then Russia, Ukraine, etc. It basically was back when it was Russian Empire. Back then, there were crazy anti-Semitic policies back then that was set up, and there were a lot of pogroms. Do you know what pogrom is?
Who knows what pogrom is? Somebody tell us. Go ahead. Yeah.
Random act of violence against Jews.
Yes. So back then there was a lot of that, and also Jews were restricted to areas where they could live. They couldn't live like just everywhere. There were certain areas that were restricted to that they could live in. Then when Bolsheviks came in, I don't know how much you know about it, but that's basically who broke the whole Russian Empire, right, and killed the Tsar and so on. They broke all those rules, and all the anti-Semitism was gone for a very small period of time, like very, very small, like 3-4 years. But then it was during Lenin's reign. So while it was Lenin, there was no anti-Semitism as much as it was prior to that. But then we had Stalin. You guys know who Stalin was? You've heard of him in your history lessons as well, right? He was not outspoken about anti-Semitism, but there was a lot of anti-Semitism going on at the same time. And during his regime, it was like starting in the 30s, early 30s, there was a called Great Purge, where thousands of Jewish leaders, including those in the communist parties, were executed or exiled. So a huge anti-Semitic wave during that time. And during World War II, it wasn't as known because we know Hitler was killing the Jews, and so it wasn't as big because also Jews were fighting the war in Russia for Soviet Union. My grandfather was fighting the war for Soviet Union. He was Jewish. So it wasn't as big, but once the war ended, again, more and more of that regime came back and more anti-Semitism came back. And as an example, there was Doctor's Plot. I don't think anybody heard of it. I don't know if the rabbi heard of it, no? It was a fabricated conspiracy accusing Jewish doctors of planning to assassinate Soviet leaders. So they basically arrested a lot of doctors and killed, obviously, too. Once Stalin died, the anti-Semitism did not die with him. It continued on and on. Jewish people face discrimination in education, employment, politics. So as an example for education and employment and all of that, right? I can, for example, Jewish kids were not allowed to graduate with straight A's, like from high school. Straight A students were not allowed. My mom was one of those who was told, like, she was a straight A student, But when she graduated, she was not allowed to have straight A's, so they had to lower certain grades for her. And so she couldn't be that. When she went to the university, which is equivalent to college, like there you have just 5 years of university versus college, and then you choose your profession. She was not allowed to go to a daytime school. She had to actually go to the evening school because she was Jewish. She was not allowed to attend any daytime school. She was able to transfer later on, but it's still, she wasn't allowed originally to go to daytime. I myself, it was already much later, obviously. It was 80s, late 80s, early 90s, when my teachers, and it was my geography teacher, my chemistry teacher, and my Russian language / literature teacher, who said they're not gonna give me anything above C because I'm Jewish. That's basically, that was the case. You're not, and my grandmother actually went to school. She was like, why is she getting C's nonstop? Because my grandmother was very
How old were you when you came here in the United States?
I was 14.
So you did a lot of school in Russia,
Yeah.
in Moscow,
Yeah.
and you couldn't get above a C. Nobody
No.
let you get above a C.
No.
Wow.
And not nobody, like
Right.
these three teachers
Yes.
said, no way we're giving, because she's Jewish and we're not gonna give it to her. We don't like Jews. And that was it. My grandmother went to school, she went to the principal, and he's like, that's what they're saying, I can't do anything much about it.
Wow.
That it is what it is. When I was in second grade, and I told you that story, it was probably the most shocking story to me, like that left a mark on me. I was in second grade, so I was 8 years old, probably. We had a lot of second grades in school, because it was a new part of Moscow that they just built, and they didn't open all the schools, just that school was open, so we had a lot of grades. Like it was, I don't know, at least 15 second grades. And classes, like 15 classes, and each class had about 30 students. I walk onto the second floor, so you can imagine how many, right, we had, and I walk into the second floor. There's each student stands on both sides of the wall, and each one of them say, you're a dirty Jew, we're not gonna be friends with you. And the funny, ironic part of it is that there was only one girl that stood up and said, I'm gonna be friends with her. You will never guess where her father was from. Never in a million years right now. He was from Libya. Like these days you would not believe that, but she was the only one who stood up and said she will be friends with me. But for a second grader who's 8 years old, it is something that stays with you, and you, like, why? Just because I was Jewish.
How did they know you were Jewish? Right? What do you guys think? How do you think they knew? Right. How do you think they knew she was Jewish? Right? Because did you look like all the other kids in your class?
Yeah.
Right? How do you think they knew that?
I mean, I want to hear
Maybe the teacher told the other kids.
Maybe the teacher told the other kids?
no.
How did the teacher know that?
Huh?
How would the teacher know that you were Jewish?
Exactly.
Or how do the teachers know to give you the C's, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, how do the teachers know? What do you think, Joe?
Maybe like they would have gotten like a little suspicious if you just got C's every single time.
It wasn't that school. It was a different school. Just a little.
You were only in second grade.
It was only second grade. Regardless, I wouldn't have geography in second grade
Yeah,
or
right.
chemistry.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So how'd they know? What do you think?
It's most likely, and that was usually the case, is the parents. They talk at home. Kids hear. They learn from them. Kids would not know because how would they know? And it was parents, mostly parents. How parents knew? Well, everybody. Like you live in the same building. We didn't have our own houses. It was like apartment buildings, lots of apartment buildings. People know. People figure it out. In addition, and I'll get to that, another way they could know, but I'll get to that in the next chapter of what I'm going to talk about. During the Soviet Union, authorities suppressed Jewish religious practices and cultural expressions. Jewish schools were closed, and Yiddish publications were heavily censored and banned. We were not allowed to practice anything. I personally grew up, I didn't know that many Jewish holidays, just because we were not allowed to practice any of them.
Were there any synagogues in your area?
There was underground synagogue in Moscow, which is not underground now, but it was underground back then, where my grandmother would go once a year to get matzah, and God forbid somebody would see it. So it was all like a conspiracy thing that was going on. And basically, growing up, the only holiday I knew was Passover. That was the only holiday I knew because we were getting matzah. That's all we had. Gefilte fish, my grandmother just made it regularly, but it wasn't like something that was Jewish to us. It was just she cooked. That was all. We were not allowed to do anything Jewish or related to Jewish. And basically, yeah, so I started celebrating all the holidays. We started celebrating. When I grew up, I came here, I went back to Russia, and then I came back here. So when I came back here a second time, and I went to Jewish youth organization here in Brooklyn, in New York. That's when basically I started celebrating all the holidays. I started learning about them, about Jewish heritage and what everything is. So that was and I was already in my 20s, late 20s. That's when it was. Before that, nothing. So, and here I'm getting to how they could have known. Back in Russia, it's still the same thing. You don't have ID. Well, you do have driver's license and so on, but for your ID, you use your passport. So everybody has a passport there.
Okay.
It's not for traveling, it's just for to use inside the country for your ID. And that passport it's called paragraph 5. And that paragraph 5 had your religion in there. And that paragraph 5 had that we were Jewish. So basically, everybody knew you were Jewish. Once you submitted documents anywhere, that's how they knew you were Jewish. Paragraph 5 said it. I had it in my first passport, but it was abolished a few years later, so I changed my passport, and that's how we got rid of it. Basically, after Soviet Union broke, and that was in different countries, right? Russia, Ukraine, and so on. The legacy of anti-Semitism continued in Russia, in Ukraine as well. But and that was the reason why, like late 80s, early 90s, there was a huge immigration wave. Like me and my husband came in the 90s. You probably have some friends whose parents came in the 90s as well. It was a huge wave, and we all were. We had that. We immigrated, but it was called like we were running from because we were Jewish, and that was the thing why we left the country. And everywhere, like when I came back and it was late 90s, I even when I worked at the job, like it was already not Soviet Union, it was already Russia, it was already like much better in terms of anti-Semitism, but I still, my first job, one of the first jobs, there was a guy, he kept talking about like Jews and how awful they are and all of that, and then he turns to me and I'm like, well, I'm Jewish. He's like, no, Anna, you're okay, you're fine, you're different. I'm like, how am I different? I'm Jewish. I'm like, no, you're okay. And that's what we had the experience, like all of us. Like, they'll talk bad about Jews, but then, oh, no, you're okay, you're fine. And we still hear that from certain people. Like I even heard it like 2 weeks ago or something like that. In Ukraine, even though there was a huge still anti-Semitism in the 90s and some early 2000s, but they started to get more like, oh, we need to commemorate like certain monuments and do this and this. So, I mean, at this point, they even you know, like Zelensky, right? Their president, you probably heard, he's Jewish, right? So saying that there's anti-Semitism, come on, they chose a Jewish president. One of the like Russia right now invaded Ukraine, and they're saying they're Nazis, and that's why like it's funny to think
They
that.
said the Ukrainians were Nazis, remember that? That's what the Russians said, that's why they said it was okay to invade, because they were getting rid of the Ukrainians who were Nazis.
Yeah, because they're Nazis, but they're obviously, they chose Jewish president, it's mind-blowing, but. And when the invasion happened, there were quite a lot of Jews in Ukraine. I don't know how many of you know, like, of any cities, how hard they got hit in Ukraine, but I had a lot of family, obviously because of Soviet Union, we had families in Ukraine and Georgia and Armenia, like it was all mixed up. So I have a lot of family in Ukraine, and some of my family was in Mariupol. I don't know if you ever heard of that city, but it got hit really hard in the first month of the war. It's basically got almost wiped out. And I had a lot of family there, and they're obviously Jewish. So while sitting there, it's a story I told during Passover, I think last year. One of my uncles, because they didn't have any access to food or water, the water they were getting from outside, from rain or from snow, because it was still March, so it's still snowing. They didn't have any access to water and food, and my uncle had some matzah prepared for Passover that he got prepared earlier, and he was giving people matzah so they can survive on that food. And we all know the history of where matzah comes from, and
Wow.
this is what happened. Yeah. So there was a huge in Mariupol had a huge Jewish community. Odessa has a huge Jewish community still, and some of them who were able to leave, like my family, some of them went to Israel and are now in Israel, and we know what's happening there right now. So they left one war to go to another war. And that's basically what we've experienced, and what we keep experiencing.
Will you tell us a little bit, Anna and her husband Edward did a project here at the temple because for Ukraine. Can you tell a little bit about what you did?
Well, we're still doing it.
Yeah, you're still doing it, yes, what you started.
We started, well, the reason was because I had my family in Ukraine, and it was just really hard to sit and watch the news. You want to think of, you want to do something, not just sit. So we started collecting aid and sent it to Ukraine. And we sent over 60 tons of aid
60 tons, did you hear that?
From the temple, yeah.
60 tons. Do you know, tell them what the temple looked like when you were,
I can show pictures.
you guys know we have a hallway down there, right, with classrooms. Every inch of this temple was full of donations.
Yeah, it was
like
full of boxes.
The classrooms were full of boxes. The hallway was full of boxes. You know what a fire hazard is, right? If the fire hazard guy had come, they would have put us all in jail because there was so much stuff. And where did all that stuff come from? All donations.
All donations.
Just people in the community, not from this temple, from everywhere, from the whole community. When people found out about it, they started bringing in. What did they bring in?
Everything from medical stuff to clothing to like everything. Like that's the reason we started helping people who were coming here, the refugees, because people were bringing us furniture and like a bed, and what we're gonna do, send it to Ukraine. Obviously, the refugees started coming in. They don't have the beds. They don't have everything. They come with absolutely nothing, like 1-2 suitcases. That's all they had. Some of them in the beginning of the war, all they had was a backpack. They had nothing left. And we started to give it to them. So that's how. And at this point, we've sent.
So you collected how many tons?
60.
60 tons, and you send it all over there.
Mhm.
And then what are you doing now with your?
We still send aid. Well,
Yeah.
I was actually gonna send our volunteers to start packing again because we just got some money, so we can send more aid. And we also help refugees. We helped almost 2,000 people that came to New Jersey. That they have kids that are your age as
What
well.
motivated you? Because think about how, do you know how much work they did to pack 600 tons of stuff? It was an insane amount of work. What motivated you to do all this work? I mean, and you didn't get paid to do this, right?
No, I still don't.
No, right? What motivated you to sit here and decide you were gonna ship over 600 tons? Like, what was your
60 tons.
I'm sorry, 60 tons. That's still a lot. 600 tons. That, you're right. 600 would be a lot, wouldn't it? It's like what motivated you to do all this work? And because, by the way, her husband, you know what happened to her husband? He lifted so many boxes, he got a hernia. You know what hernia is? He's fine. He had that little surgery, right?
Yeah,
He had that little surgery because he lifted some. So what motivated you guys to like do all this incredible amount of work?
Well, in the beginning, it was not to go crazy because we have family in Ukraine, and it was just very tough. And then we just couldn't stop because we were helping people. We know we helped people, and we just wanted to do it, just to help. I don't know. That's all. I think we're doing it for us.
Why do you say that?
Personally, I don't know. I just think
So it makes you feel better. It makes you feel better.
It makes you feel good, and you're doing it for yourself. But and then you say, "Oh, it's selfish of me to think that." But
No way.
But at the same time, when you help people like refugees, and a lot of people actually ask me, like, "How do you continue helping our refugees?" Because believe me, not everybody's thankful. Not everybody's gonna come back and say, "Oh, thank you for helping us." Some will call us the next day and say, "Oh, that furniture does not look good.
Yeah.
Somebody came over and laughed at us, so can you please pick it up back? We don't want it." We continue. If we did it for them, probably we would have stopped.
Yeah.
But we keep on doing it, and also because we know we were refugees ourselves, not running from war, but we were refugees, and we also came here with nothing, and we didn't know any English.
Yeah.
We didn't know anywhere to go. What do we do?
Yeah.
And we wanted to help and have them settle.
Anybody got any questions for Anna? Who's got some questions? What do you guys think of that passport thing? What did you think of that?
It was horrible.
Right? Isn't that terrible? Why do you think that passport thing was such a problem? Like in the United States, anybody got a passport in here?
Yeah.
What's on your passport in the United States? What's on it?
Name,
Your name. What else is on there?
birthday,
Date of birth, clean how old you are. What else?
your state.
So the state where it's from. What else they put on a passport? Yeah.
If you're male
Or married or single.
female.
Oh, male or female. Very good. Yeah, yeah. But what's the problem with putting religion on your passport? What do you think the problem with that is? What do you think, Zach?
With certain countries, they don't allow certain religions, so you can't get to certain places. Even though your country might be able to get to that certain place, if they don't agree with that religion and they see it, they may not like it.
Fair enough. Good. What's another problem with having your religion written on your passport? What's another problem with having your religion written on your passport? Yeah.
There are some religions that some people don't like at all.
Right. I mean, think about it. If you don't like Jews, and every time you have to use something in Russia, right? You have to use your passport. Did you have to use your passport to check into a hotel?
Mm-hmm.
Did you have to use it to buy stuff?
Not to buy, but certain things, yeah.
So if you were gonna make a big purchase, maybe you had to use your passport. You had to use your passport to check into a hotel. So if somebody was at the hotel and they didn't like Jews, and you show them your passport and it says Jewish on it, maybe they won't let you in the hotel. Maybe they'll call you something, right?
Certain ones were probably banned.
Right.
To go to, yeah.
So I mean that's a real problem, right? That's a real problem. Good. Does anybody have any questions for Anna? Well, I want to thank you very much, Anna, for coming and being with us today. We really appreciate it. Thank you for your time. And I think here in America we kind of take some of our freedoms for granted, and so that was very helpful, for us to understand other perspectives. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
All right.